Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, August 27th at 5:15 PM. And with a quorum of members present, I am going to call the Finance Committee to order. Item number 1 on our agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting, August 14th, 2024. And the minutes are in your packet. If there's any questions or comments on those, otherwise I'll entertain a motion. Okay, a motion from Killian. Second from Gisselman. Discussion? Not hearing anything. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And that is approved. All right. And item number 2 is discussion and possible action regarding ARPA funding requests and related budget modification for Wausau Waterworks meter purchases. And we talked about this at our last meeting, and we had a little bit of homework to do a ARPA ranking. And I think Mary Ann is going through those numbers right now on how that kind of...
Yep, so based on the ranking, it looks like we got...
Oh, turn your mic on.
Sorry. Based on the ranking, I'm looking here. Hold on, I could just make a change to my formula here. We have an average ranking of 69.25, which is, I think falls within range of other projects that have been funded. Again, this was $800,000 to purchase water meters. I don't know, Eric, if you want to come up and talk. Obviously, council approved $1 million coming out of the general fund. This would supplement that. The total need is $2,012,000, so that $200,000 difference we were anticipating would be able to be funded by the water utility as we get more accurate reading from meters and as they get installed over time. These would have to go out for a formal procurement. Once that procurement was completed, we would sign a purchase order, and that would then obligate the funds before December 31st of 2024, which would meet the ARPA requirements.
Yeah.
Okay, and I guess the big question is, we've, for unencumbered funds in our, that we have available is $867,184. So that puts the committee at a choice. We can either allocate $800,000 for water meters, or we could allocate $800,000 for a solar array, but we would be unable to do both.
Right.
So.
I would say with the, I would say with the solar array, I think we're kind of past that point as far as being able to obligate those funds for that project. Just, we would have to design it, get it out for bid, and I just, when we looked at it prior, it would had to have been approved probably at the latest, the beginning of August. So I think we're kind of past that point.
And I think the other complication with the solar was it didn't fund the entire project. So we
Right.
still had a gap there, which we had, talked about whether we would use debt or what we would actually use to fund that. So I think that was the other complicating component of the solar project.
Because, there was about a $450,000 gap. I think the two projects scored pretty close
Yes.
to each other, so. Alder Killian.
I think at the last meeting when the solar array, when this was discussed about ARPA funds for the meters instead of the solar array, I believe I asked the question if there would be other funding available for the solar array, and you indicated that, yes, we could look at that. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, that would be correct.
So that project is not gone and forgotten?
Correct. You would be able to look at that, let's say, next year as part of the 2025 budget planning. You would be able to include that. It didn't go through the CIP process specifically, but you could still add that to the capital plan for 2025 if you elected to.
Yeah, it's a heavy ask, but it could go through CIP next year. That's certainly true.
And I did have a discussion with one of the individuals involved with the solar array program yesterday, And he indicated that there will be a change in figures because they've reevaluated at which times they're going to be running certain things, and it's going to make a difference in the overall cost, so.
Okay.
And the other thing, you wouldn't, like if you were feeling stressed about allocating the full 800, you can always make a partial allocation if that is something that the committee is interested in. You don't have to fund the full ask if that's, but it would then allow us to encumber
Do we have
the
any,
majority of our
do we have
funds.
any other projects that we've kind of set a pin in that we haven't, that we wanted to come back to? I don't see those on the,
Yeah.
on the spreadsheets that you supplied us.
Well, we had some that were contemplated back in April. Most of those went through CIP and now are in the CIP plan for
Okay.
2025.
There, okay, so there was a couple, and I think, yeah, we did discuss some parks projects, but I think we already allocated
Yes.
those through ARPA, so, okay. Alder Kisselman.
But the ARPA for the solar array is still in front of the city council
Yes,
at the
but-
next city council meeting, right?
Yes,
I
it
mean,
would go
where
before-
these both will sort of come before the city council, so that's still,
Yes,
that decision still is in front of the city council whenever.
yep.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any feeling on, with some of these other projects that we've got hanging out there, if they're gonna get, contracts signed or spent down by the end of the year?
I think we are doing pretty well on those. I had a conversation with Eric last week, I think, about kind of circling back in September and putting together a strategic, I guess, plan on how we want to handle that so that we don't have anything unspent by the end of the year. Tammy Stratz had called me indicating that she was interested in coming before Finance at the September 10th meeting to talk about the Catholic Charities agreements, which actually, are looking like they're going to have extra money and perhaps requesting that we carry that program forward through 2025. So that will be before Finance September 10th, but it wouldn't require additional allocation. It would just be the allocation that's currently there.
Okay. And Eric, with these water meters, I mean, can these be ordered right up till the end of the year, pretty much, or?
Yeah, we can put in orders anytime.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So Scott's already put in an order with the allocation for the $1 million from the general fund. And then we would go ahead and put another order in, based on if the city council approved this
Okay.
as well. Yeah. These we would have to bid, so, yeah, we would send out a bid for these. There's one supplier in the area, but, with the procurement requirements, we'd follow all of those and then be able to put in another order.
So we're bidding out to like distributors and that? But
Yeah,
it's-
to
it's-
suppliers, really.
Okay.
We can't buy directly from Census.
Okay.
For the meters, and so I'm aware of only one supplier that's allowed to supply these in the area. So
Okay.
that's kind of how it goes.
All right, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
So I guess, committee, how do you feel? I mean, do we want to allocate all of this? Do we want to allocate half of this and the rest a little bit later this fall, or Alder McElhaney?
I'll make a motion to fund $800,000 for 20 years.
Okay, a motion is on the floor for 800,000 and a second from Tierney. Any other discussion? Not hearing anything. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And
Thank you.
opposed? All right, that carries. Thanks. And item number 4, a discussion and possible action approving a budget amendment recognizing the grant award of $498,482.08 for a Wisconsin DNR Urban Forestry Inflation Reduction Act grant for City of Wausau tree planting and private ash mitigation project. That's-
As I say, that's number,
Maybe we can take that one, it'll be really quick.
Oh, wait a minute. Am I on the wrong number? Oops, I'm sorry. We can, we'll put a hold on number 4, and we'll go back up to number 3. Discussion and possible action regarding the resolution authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $9,100,000 general obligation promissory notes, Series 2023C. And this are, debt obligations that we've passed through the 2024 budget, so.
Yes, that's correct. Each year during the budget process, we go through our projects and come up with projects and then the funding source, which, oftentimes is debt issuance. We were able to, as part of that process, the 2024 budget actually anticipated $11 million worth of borrowing. I was able to pare that down to $9 million because tax increment district number 3 had cash on hand. So we didn't need to borrow for the funds. So the projects didn't need debt borrowing. So we're down to the $9 million. You can see that on my memo, most of them are amortized over 10 years, which is our standard amortization schedule, and then the motor pool replacement is at 5 years. So we're trying to, for sure meet the useful life of the projects with that debt amortization. Obviously, most of our street and stormwaters are way in excess of 10 years. So Phil Cosson is our financial advisor. They help us facilitate the debt. In your packet, we had an attachment that showed their preliminary information about what they think that the debt issue would look like. We borrow through what we call a parameters resolution, which allows them to do the sale on the most advantageous date for the city with parameters on what the interest rate will be and things like that. So Phil, do you want to give a little presentation? There he is. Hopefully. Right now, we can't hear you.
I think he's talking.
Maybe he could.
Yeah, our sound is working, so.
I don't know, Phil, we're not receiving any audio from you, so I don't know if it's on our end or your end, but we're looking into it.
Okay. So in my memo was the schedule. So again, it looks at finances authorization to issue the debt today. It would go before the Common Council on the 10th. Whenever we issue debt, we have to prepare an official statement. That official statement provides any purchasers or investors about financial information on the city. So we would complete that and have our phone conference with the rating agency, which is Moody's, on September 16th. The sale would take place on October 2nd, and we would close on the loan on October 24th. Typically, the city does issue debt a little bit sooner than September or October, but this year, because of delays in issuing our financial statements, we have to have those available in the official statement. So that actually delayed the sale. I think probably that's going to work to our benefit because interest rates have been coming down a little bit. In Phil's presentation.
Mary Ann, can you hear me?
Yes.
We got you, Phil, thank you.
Oh, I apologize for that. I mean, the headset on and wasn't being recognized. My apologies. Mary Ann, you're doing a great job. Keep going.
Yeah. So he did have the interest rate trends, and you can see that they have declined with June being kind of the peak, May, June being the kind of peak of interest rates in 2024. So timing-wise, I think we're going to hit it at a good time. But I don't know, Phil, if you want to keep on going.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize. Yeah, I would agree with everything that Mary Ann said. Yes, we will be continuing, one of the other benefits of the parameter sale, we've done this now for the city the last number of years, is that if there is a hiccup in the market, or we think there's gonna be some good news, we could either, speed up or even postpone the sale, since it's not on a specific council meeting evening. And it gives us that flexibility in case there's some market activity that is going to create some challenges. So we have seen a correction in the market. The chart we show you is from a week ago. It doesn't sound like long, but we've seen a little more correction even since that time. And we expect with the announcement recently that to see a continued correction in the interest rate market. So we would expect the city to issue somewhere around, in today's environment, around 3.5% over the 10-year period. In our pre-sale report, as Mary Ann indicated, we do have a breakout by purpose, is table number 4, if you have that in front of you. And again, the goal here always is to make sure that we're always borrowing money for the useful life of the asset. The motor pool replacement, again, is only for 5 years, the rest is 10 years. And we're not really structuring the debt in a way that we're pushing off debt into the later years. We are making sure that you have flexibility in the future to be able to take on other capital expenditures. And that's really what's being played out in table number 5, where we show that even with this debt issue coming on, we expect the tax rate for debt service to drop in subsequent years, allowing yourself the ability to take on future projects, because no community's ever done with dealing with capital expenditures. So again, the timeline that Mary Ann laid out is within our document. Really a couple of the key dates. One, we're going to have a rating call. The city is rated AA3. We always try to put our best foot forward, working with the rating agencies. That'll happen the week of May 16th. And now that we have audited financials, we can proceed with that. And then right now, we're scheduled for this to occur on October 2nd, with the understanding that may change, depending on what happens in the market. So we have that flexibility to move things around.
I think the other thing I would just mention too is, there is a lot of, I guess, feedback on the amount of debt that we're issuing. Over the years, whenever the city has been hit with financial challenges, such as loss of shared revenue, a desire to control the tax rate, one of the easy targets is to take whatever levy dollars we have that we're using on capital projects and say, oh, we're going to fund operations instead. And so over the years, we've, sort of dwindled down what we are allocating for capital with actual levy dollars. So paying cash, if you look at your house and how you make your home improvements, you would expect, some things you're going to pay cash for, and if you have a huge improvement, you're going to maybe borrow for it, do a home equity loan or refinance your house. Same with the city, though we have been paying cash for fewer and fewer projects because all of our levy, which is where we get our cash from, is being allocated to pay for operations. And so that then, the need to replace those capital items, the streets, the storm sewers, things like that, doesn't end, but we just don't have the cash then to fund it, so we have to resort to borrowing. And so that is basically the situation that the city finds itself in, is we don't generate any cash to pay for these street maintenance. And when I say maintenance, I'm talking about replacement.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, we work with a lot of municipalities all through the state. It's not unique to the city. It's levy limits for the period of time we've been under has some flexibility, but it really limits the community's ability to levy for anything that's major capital intensive. So It's exactly right. You end up in the market on an annual basis for a city your size to undertake these capital expenditures. Therefore, we really mindfully try to work through with staff a structure knowing that that's the case so that you don't box yourself in future years. You can have flexibility, and that's what I was referring to earlier.
Okay, any questions for Phil? Seeing any. Oh, wait, yeah, go ahead, Gary.
With regard to the Public Works, the Eau Claire Boulevard, what, close to 2.5 million, maybe, somewhere around there. Is that, and there was just one neighborhood, is that usual? Is that the usual amount that we would be doing every year? It seems like that's a lot of money.
It is a little higher than usual, yes.
But will there be more expense? Is this it? I guess
Yes.
I'm just asking, is this it? Or are there more through the water utility or other? It just seems like it's a lot of money.
Sure. So you approved a safe drinking water loan that will be closing next week, I think. And that was for, I think, about $1,025,000. And then the clean water loan for the sewer portion has not, you authorized a reimbursement resolution, which basically means go ahead and do the project. We're going to reimburse ourselves with those funds at a later date. But we haven't brought that before you for actual approval yet. And I might have that on my little memo here. Hold on. I believe that's like 495,000.
I believe that's fairly close.
Yeah.
Mary Ann.
So those would be the others. Like I said, one you've approved, the other one you have not approved yet.
So the total,
Is more than what's showing on here.
right.
Yep.
The question then is, how substantially can we afford these every year when other needs, basically streets, but I guess that's a question for infrastructure, but I'm just saying that, I'm just raising that.
It is a challenge. And as Phil said, like each year, because we issue generally 10-year debt, each year, and as I said in my memo, you're retiring about $12 million worth of debt in 2024 and issuing $9 million. So you are, in that situation for general obligation, retiring more than you were taking on. And because we consistently issue 10-year debt, you would have one issue retiring as new debt is added on. So that's basically how it fits in. It's just laddered. Obviously, the increase in interest rates, 10 years ago, we were probably, I don't know, but it was probably 1% or something like that, very low. So the interest rate increase
That's
has
gonna
had an impact on us as well, yes.
Thank you very much, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem, the challenge with Eau Claire Boulevard is it's a fairly long street.
Right.
And has some, it's a little different, configured a little differently than some of the other streets in the city too.
Right,
so.
and I think costs have increased, over time, and
Yeah.
that's the other
But that is,
struggle
yeah,
that we
that is an expensive project.
deal with.
so.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? I don't know, do we need to take action on this or to approve the
Yes.
parameters? Okay,
Yep.
so we need a motion to establish, I guess, authorize the issuance and establish the parameters of sale for the 2024, or for the debt,
24C.
yeah, 2023C, so.
24C.
Is it 24 or 2024C? It's wrong in the agenda. So I'll entertain a motion. A motion from Gisselman, a second from Killian. Any discussion? Not hearing anything. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that carries. Thank you.
Thank
No.
you.
Yep, thanks, Phil, for coming in. I really appreciate it. Let's see, we're going to move on to item number 4, discussion and possible action approving of a budget amendment recognizing the grant award of $498,482.08 for Wisconsin DNR Urban Forestry Inflation Reduction Act grant for the City of Wausau tree planting and private ash mitigation project. So there's information in the packet there, and this is a pretty substantial grant for taking care of the, both the emerald ash borer and replanting trees, because it said it was 25% of our canopy's been lost over a 3-year period, so 900 trees will be planted to help recover from
And-
that.
You have 2 parks people here.
Yeah, we got Parks here if anybody's got any questions. So, Alder Killian?
Just wondered, the grant covers the whole thing?
Thank you. So I'm going to actually introduce John Kayan, our city forester, but we wanted to put this on the agenda. So this is a very significant grant. There was $4 million available, right? 4 million? $4 million available total, and we got every penny we asked for, even down to the 8 cents. John did a lot of work on this, so I'll let him talk about what this will cover for that. And the private ash tree part is a big part, so he'll explain what that means for our private property owners that are in our lower income areas of the city. But this is a substantial grant for us. We will be putting out, we'll work with the mayor's office on putting out a press release on this once the DNR has put out their press release, letting the state know of all the recipients for this. So it is something to be proud of, and I'll introduce John now to talk a little bit more about what it means.
Thank you, Jamie. To address your question first, Alder Killian, the grant is a 100% grant. There is no match. So this is 100% money towards the city. And so this grant is actually going towards the underserved areas of Wausau. So there's specific parameters as to where we can plant these trees, where we can do this mitigation work, as well as a third portion of this grant is actually working with our school districts within this area, our specific schools. We're doing planting education with our school children about these trees. So the value of trees, importance of planting trees, and caring for those types of things as well. So in the underserved areas of Wausau, that's roughly just under 50% of the city, so that's very significant. We'll be able to plant, over a 3-year period this grant is good for, we'll be able to plant 300 trees per year. We're actually going to be able to put $100,000 towards removal and mitigation of private ash trees that are causing problems for private landowners that can't afford to remove them, as well as we're doing planting with our schools. So that's our plan for the full grant.
Alder McElhaney?
Question, what are the parameters that people are considered underserved, or the word you used?
Sure. So the federal government actually defines that. We actually go through a website. I do have a map here. It's kind of hard to produce the map off their system. But it's through their parameters. It goes from everything from schooling to income to floodplains. There's a whole bunch of parameters in there. There's over a dozen parameters that are in there. So they line those out, and the DNR adopts those, and we work within those parameters.
Okay, thanks.
So as part of our emerald ash mitigation project, the city is removing, we pay to remove the trees on the boulevards on the city side, but private land, if there's an ash tree on private property, it's the property owners, that it's their responsibility to remove that tree then, correct?
That is correct, yes. The only time that we get involved with a private ash tree is if it's influencing or causing trouble for public space. We actually then require that resident to remove it, and they're still at their cost.
Yeah, so this is a pretty big deal then, to allocate that much money for removing some of those private trees to help, stem the ash borer. In the replantings, is there a priority then to the certain types of trees to sort of favor native species then, or is that up to the forester to make that mix, for the city, or?
Sure. So part of our plan is to be diverse, because as you're seeing, losing our ash trees is a big, big deal for us. That was only about 18% of our forest. Right now, maple is 37%. So we're trying to stay away from certain species, be more diverse in general, and trying to also match species to the site. Some trees are too large for sites. We're going to put a small tree where a small tree belongs, a large tree where a large tree can go. And we're really focusing on replanting those areas that are highly impacted by a lot of hard surface, so heat islands. And for people who are losing trees on their personal property, we're taking ashes out.
Okay. Any other questions? Alder Gilselman.
Can you speak a little bit to the canopy that's part of your request a lot of canopies have disappeared in the last several years. Are those part of this, or, because it's part of the canopy, are you replacing those?
Sure, so
No.
we're losing mature canopy. So when you lose a mature tree, you have a larger canopy. We can replace with a smaller tree. We're planting typically about a 2-inch caliper tree, which for general purposes is say 8 to 10 feet tall in that range.
So
you're
that's
not-
what this is, this project is the 2-inch?
Correct. There'll be smaller planted trees. If we go larger, they don't survive as well. So that size we find survives very well. They're not too small where they get hurt by snow plowing, things like that. So it's the perfect size for us for survivability. And then we actually expect to grow that canopy over time.
Well, 50 years. You know, I have, as you well know, I have an issue with clear cutting down streets and boulevards in the city, and those canopies are lost for maybe 75 years. So I'm glad that you're using that, but I think we can still do better at trying to preserve some of the canopies in this city.
Agreed.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to accept the grant. A motion from Killian, a second from Tierney. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that carries. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I guess Parks on deck again, because item number 5, discussion and possible action accepting a bid from Spawn Ranch through cooperative purchasing agreement for the construction of the Oak Island Skate Park. And I've been looking forward to hearing information on this, because this is one of our first ARPA requests that we've approved maybe, almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, you're going to get it built. So we had we bid this project out 2 different times. There's the skate park companies in our nation, actually, because they're all over the country, are extremely, extremely busy. And I think ARPA did have a lot to do with enhancing our communities. But this is, Spawn Ranch is actually the designer who designed the property, or designed the project. Nothing in the project was proprietary to Spawn Ranch, so it was out for bid 2 other times. We didn't get any other bids from other skate park companies for a variety of reasons. I've talked to all of them, and I have emails from each and every one of them. I think most of them, maybe not each and every one of them, but most of them I have responses from as to their timeline and why they couldn't bid on this project. But we also work with cooperative purchasing agreement for a number of things too, and Spawn Ranch does fit within that parameters of that, so that's how we're moving forward with this project. They are able to complete with the base bid that you'll see in the packet of the ramps themselves is our biggest challenge. We don't have the expertise on staff to do the ramps. We can do the flat work. So they're going to do the ramps, and then we're going to continue to fundraise for the additional flat work that needs to get done. So I talked with our local skate board shop today on different ways. We have some other grants that we'll be putting in, but we do have the funds to do the phase 1 portion.
all right.
Yay.
Any questions? And then it looks like as part of the overall project, there is some stuff, that the city or the county has to do with like asphalt and landscaping then, or?
Yeah, we'll do all the demolition in-house. We can do that with our machinery, and we'll move the existing ramps off to the side, and we'll be doing some refurbishing of those with our own staff. And then we do all the finishing work and the landscaping. We have the expertise in-house to do all that, so that will save us money from the contractor not having to do it.
Okay,
And this will be done in the spring of 2025. They
All right.
are on board, it's on their schedule, they're ready to do it as long as it's approved.
so it should be ready by next summer, I would imagine?
Yeah, goal would be mid-June,
Mid-June.
that we could have it open, barring that we can get all the flat work done.
Okay. Any questions for Director Polly? Not hearing anything, otherwise I'll entertain a motion to accept the bid. A motion from Killian, a second from Tierney. Discussion? Not hearing anything. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? And that carries. Thanks.
Thank
We're
you.
looking forward to this. And item number 6,
Or postpone.
we're gonna postpone this one. That's discussion and possible action regarding budget modification for tax increment district 8 tax increment grants. So that will be pulled from the agenda. Item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding budget modification for Animal Control Fund. And as you recall, at the last council meeting, there was an amendment made to the to the resolution for the animal control program. And what the resolution stated was to keep a full-time animal control officer and then add 2 CSOs part-time to also fill in. And at that meeting, we did not know what the fiscal impact was going to be. So that amendment was tabled, brought back to finance, and now Mary Ann has given us an analysis of the fiscal impact of adding 2 additional CSOs for animal control. So Alder Tierney.
Yeah, my question is, in that amendment, he wasn't asking for 2 additional CSOs. He was looking at 2 CSOs that we currently have on staff to enhance this like it was supposed to begin with.
I think I got Chief Barnes coming up here, but I think what the larger issues are is our CSOs are limited term employees. They run from like May through August. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So
Yeah, I think yes and yes. I'll try and flesh this out. There is no funding remaining this year, and that was a point I made at that meeting, to fund 2 20-hour-a-week CSOs between now and the end of the year. And there isn't funding for, because you'll notice on this, it references 2 FTEs. It's really 1 full-time FTE and 2.5 FTEs, 2.5 in parentheses FTEs to equal that total of 2. And the funding doesn't exist to pay for either of those at this point through the end of the year. And that's what this budget modification. So that dollar figure to be able to do that between now and the end of the year is $21,603.20.
Well, I guess here's my other question then, because one of the things we had talked about was by having CSOs do the animal control, there would be that rotation, that constant turnover of people doing that work. And there would be that additional training, that certification that would need to be ongoing. But there was, I guess, talk that we have some CSOs that aren't the college people or the tech people that might be interested in this. So I guess I'm a little lost because Alder Larson was talking about not adding CSOs, but taking what we already have, which was apparently in the original ask of this position. So we were only looking at what the funding would be to that animal control officer from October to the end of the year, was my understanding.
Right. We use CSOs at a high rate and bill the animal control fund for those CSOs throughout the year. The vast majority of those hours come when we have a pool of CSOs, which is generally the summer months, because for the most part, most of our current CSOs are college students. So we end up with college students that have a willingness to continue to work throughout the year in the CSO capacity on weekends or in evening hours outside of their classes, with 1 or 2 CSOs who are not college students and full-time employed elsewhere that work as a CSO part-time for us, in addition to their professional careers.
So I guess my take on this is by having a permanent person in place, and I'm talking about the position, not the current animal control person.
Sure.
Because we're just talking about the position here. As far as who actually does that, that's between you and HR. That's not a council
Yep.
situation. But because we would have this multiple turnover in this position, that concerns me, rather than having one person who would be working with the community vets, the Humane Society, that would not need recertification. So that's kind of the positive I see in this, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to address that, or I don't know if we're going askew of the agenda. I'll leave that up to you.
I know we should
The
probably,
chairman.
we probably should stay within the financial aspects, the fiscal aspects of this.
Yeah, I mean,
Because it's, otherwise, we're not really agendized to talk about HR implications.
so more than happy to discuss that. Here's what I can say is, again, that's not a concern I share about our effectiveness, and I don't think it has a significant financial impact on the proposal that we put forth.
and I wasn't going down the HR road, that's why I said that would be between him and HR. What I'm looking at is the cost, the additional cost, and is it worth it to have a person in place that is a constant? So,
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a cost, there's going to be an additional cost because CSO dollars get pretty much consumed during the summer months. So to carry CSO activities off season will be an expense.
Well, I mean, I think from that standpoint, that if the expectation of the council is that we'll employ a full-time employee in the humane officer position as well as 2 part-time CSOs throughout the entire year, that's what our budget ask will be for 2025 as we're working on our budgets right now. This is regarding the expectation, as I understood it at the last council meeting, which is between now and the end of the year, what is the budget impact on the police department to employ a full-time person in the humane officer position as well as adding 2 part-time, which I equate to 20-hour per week, people in the CSO position, and that's what that $21,600 is. I think there's a whole different formula and set of numbers, if I'm understanding you, Alder Tierney, correctly, to determine, well, what's the financial impact on turnover when we're using part-time staff, and what will we expect our experience to be moving forward, and what is that cost, and how does that impact operationally and financially at the same time? And some of that would be, to be able to answer that, some of that would be my best guess, but I mean, what I can tell you is, I think we'll have enough consistency and the ability to train those individuals without significant expense outside of the expense when we send people to the humane officer training.
Alder McElhaney, you had a question?
I guess I just want to clarify that this amount is just for the rest of 2024, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So then if we go forward with 2 part-time, that would be quite significantly more next year in the budget.
I don't have that number because I don't have the dollar figure that we allocated. I'd have to take the total assigned wages for that, subtract the cost of the humane officer, and then the remaining funding has generally been used to fund CSO hours that get allocated to the animal control. So I'd have to look at the difference between 20 hours a week times 2 CSOs times 52 weeks. And I'm not prepared at this moment to give you that answer. It would be more.
And I guess, I don't know, I was not here at the last council meeting, so I'm not sure what they wanted, but I don't see an amendment just for the next, what is it, September, October, November, December. I would assume they were thinking to run into the next year, which is another, which would be in addition to the 2025 budget.
Yeah, Larson's amendment was to run for for 1 year.
Okay, so, yeah.
I mean,
then
my
assess the
ask
program.
is whatever decision is made, let's have it run through the calendar year 25 instead of like in September of next year, we're back here going, like, what do we do? So it would probably be 15 months instead of 12.
Yeah. Alder Killian?
I guess my feeling about this is that at the last council meeting, one alderperson said that we needed time to take a look at this because it was such a controversial issue. and it has been a controversial issue. And I believe the reason it's been such a controversial issue is because the proposal was made, and I have never seen such strong resident response in our community saying, I don't want that proposal, I want us to retain the humane officer. They didn't say it with assistance, but they said, we want the humane officer position. And I believe that's why it was such a controversial issue. And if we can look at 15 months, and as the staff has suggested, if we need to take the money out of reserve, then so be it. But I really believe that our community has spoken very strongly about what they want, and I believe we need to listen to that.
Alder McElhenney?
I guess I just need to respond because I have heard from my residents. I haven't heard from the community at large, and not one resident has been vociferously, behind anything besides what the police. Now, I'm not saying that's not done somewhere else, but I want to clear what I've heard in my neighborhood groups and with people calling me and emailing me about this. So that's my personal experience.
And
Yeah, Alder Cullion?
maybe I should clarify, I have been watching, because this was of such interest to me, and I've had so many of my constituents respond to it. I watched carefully what was in the media, and in the Wausau pilot particularly, and the response was so strong and positive. I can't say that I spoke to every resident in the city, but I did follow what was being placed in the media, and that's what I saw. And I have never seen quite such a strong response, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and, since we have some media sources here today, I think it's important for my staff to hear me say that during a previous council with a different finance committee, I stood here and received direction to reevaluate the program and have our city staff do that, and to research throughout the state what they felt the best practices are and what the best way to provide the best service to the city and expand the services that we provide. The staff that worked on that, I felt, did an outstanding job, and we came back with a program that was less expensive and we felt would provide a better service as a result of the additional things that they were doing. And I will say, as long as I stand here as chief, that I'm a policy carrier outer. You are the policy makers. You set policy and tell us what you want, and as long as it's lawful and ethical, we'll carry it out for you. So this has never been about polling the community or who feels positively about one thing or the other. We were well aware from the start that this was not an issue that was going to have a groundswell of people showing up on behalf of the police department. And we were well aware that there are some individuals that feel strongly about our humane officer, and that's wonderful, or about animals, and that they were going to show up. But I am proud of the staff. They did a tremendous amount of work to do exactly what our policymakers asked them to do. And now I respectfully turn it over to you guys as the policymakers to dictate to us how you'd like us to carry out the work of the city.
Yeah, I know this has been a very long process. As I sat on that previous finance committee, and we've been talking about this, since February. So it's amazing that it's carried on this long. I'm just going to echo what Alder McElhaney said. As I've, talking in our neighborhood groups, I get the same vibe that she does, is that it's not I haven't heard issues from them about animal control and one way or the other. So I don't see the same groundswell of support of the current system than, within our neighborhood groups. It doesn't matter to them one way or the other, I guess, as long as the animal control services are carried out. So any other discussion? Okay. Well, it's moving forward on this. I guess we'll need to take action on, because this is I guess, it is a budget modification. We need to take action on it because the council sent it back to finance. I'm not going to be supporting this. I didn't support the amendment. So, we will entertain a motion to accept the budget modification. A motion from Killian, second from Tierney. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Okay, opposed? No. Okay, 3-2. Got it, okay. And motion carries. So that'll go back to council. All right, item number 8. Discussion and possible action on vacation of right-of-way at 700 Grand Avenue for Commonwealth Development and releasing obligation of the DOT for reimbursing city for property purchase. And a lot of information in our pack. There's a fair amount of information in our packet on this. Basically, when we first started the conversation of building affordable housing on that corner of Thomas and Grand Avenue, there wasn't any, there has been talk of rebuilding Grand Avenue and that intersection for at least the last 20 years, ever since the city first purchased that property on the corner. But the DOT has not specified one way or the other that they were going to actually move a project forward until this summer. So 2 years ago, the Commonwealth Development Plan started, and when that began, we were not expecting the DOT to come back and want to do a project on Grand Avenue, but now we're kind of in this quandary on what to do about vacating the right-of-way. So I don't know if there's any questions on that for Eric, or we also have economic development in here too. Alder McElhaney?
I guess I see this as a big sum of money that we would be giving up. And knowing we just talked about the $9 million that we borrowed for general obligation bonds, with much of it being road construction. We just had a discussion how much I'm not convinced that we should be giving up $332,000 plus on road reconstruction from the state by doing this. So somebody needs to convince me of that.
Okay. And I think this is almost an either or kind of thing. So if we want to accept the DOT's purchase of that right of way, that almost puts a death knell to affordable housing in that location. Am I correct? I don't know if Randy can kind of clue us in on that.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, so this would be, as you stated, if we were to move forward with the reimbursement for the DOT right-of-way, this would pretty much negate that entire Commonwealth project. Kind of the way I looked at it and sum it up is we have the opportunity to go forward with that reimbursement in the future. We're talking 6-7 years in the future that we'd be reimbursed that money that the city purchased those properties for in 2007. That would effectively make that property tax exempt for perpetuity. Or we have the opportunity to move forward with two needs that the city has talked about for a long time, a lot of conversation: affordable housing and tax base. So with taking that reimbursement from the DOT, effectively that makes that vacant land tax exempt for perpetuity, like I stated. By having a building there, we're going to generate tax revenue on there in the future. So if you look at, and I didn't do any calculations because we don't know what tax revenue is going to be generated on that property, but over time we would recapture that amount of money. It's just a longer game.
My question also, maybe for Eric, I mean, I've gotten a lot of comments since this Commonwealth came up because of where it's, the potential location there, and with the amount of, traffic in Thomas and Grand Avenue. What I've heard, and I don't know if that's true, but a lot of comments that came to me was that was supposed to be a turn. Part of that land was supposed to be an extra turn into Grand Avenue. Is that true? I guess I just want everybody to know that I've heard a lot of negative comments of not the project, but where it's at, putting more dense property and apartments in an area that we have the fire department across the street, we have the police department right there, and then we have Thomas and Grand, which is probably, that intersection's got to be one of the most highly visible intersections that has a lot of traffic on it.
It does. That was one of the challenges that, just over the past month, we've been talking with the DOT on, right? We preserved about 20 feet of the property on the east side of that area, just because we weren't sure exactly how much was going to be needed. The DOT did do some turning movements for us and what they anticipated, and they do anticipate needing that 20 feet, so that would be preserved. There are, it is a challenging site, right? I just like the West Side Battery site is a challenging site. It's on a one-way street. We do not like granting more access out on Grand Avenue, especially that close to a light. I guess one of the, and then the other issue was the storm sewer, right? So they moved their building to the south, and that did two things, right? One is it just kind of took that storm sewer out of play, which was a large expense. And then that access that they want out on Grand Avenue, initially, engineering wasn't really, didn't see that as a positive, right, in and out there. And there's a center median there too. And so it would have been a right in, right out, but we have seen that people on Grand Avenue, they will use that and then try to get around that site. Well, when they moved it to the south, right, it's pinched in between. So, if somebody turns in there, they have to go down into the garage. There's not a way to skip the light and go around and things like that. And so, and kind of make a U-turn there. So, but to answer your question, yeah, I mean, it's a challenging site, right? Everybody's really going to have to enter that. If you don't have a parking space in the basement, then you'll be entering that off of Thomas Street. Yep.
Alder Killian?
I agree with Alder McElhaney. I think we just talked about the $9 million and not having cash to pay for anything. So isn't there an option of saying we can accept the $332,000 from the DOT and find another location for that much-needed property? I don't know that that has been proposed to Commonwealth, but if Commonwealth would be open to that.
So this project was awarded low-income housing tax credits, which are assigned through a competitive process based on site location. So if they were to move the site, they would lose that allocation, and the project would be done.
So that's definite. They don't know that they could have those credits?
So the site, like I said, the site is site-specific, so they're grading on a criteria. There's different census things, location to, say you're on a bus route, different things like that. So when they're awarded that, they're awarded to a site-specific location. And that's what we heard talking to WIDA.
You mentioned about it not being not having tax revenue if we accepted the DOT offer. How long would it take us to generate $332,000 in taxes from that development?
I'm not aware, I don't know what it would be because we'd have to wait till the assessment, the property was done, construction was completed, the assessment was completed. So just doing some research and looking at other properties like trolley quarter flats and different things like that. I'm going to throw out a number, and I don't know if it's correct or not, but I'd estimate that their assessed or their taxes generated from that property are going to be conservatively like $60,000 or so for that development.
So if we accept the DOT offer, we probably would be not behind financially?
Well, we would be behind for a number of years.
For
There's
a
going to be
few
a long
years.
period of time before we catch up to that. Yeah.
Okay, and I agree we need the affordable housing, but it feels like the issue of throwing away $332,000 right now is pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying on that. I would also think about all the different committee of the whole and different conversations we've had around affordable housing, homelessness, and trying to solve that problem. The reason that we need to subsidize projects like this, not just through the LIHTC credits, not just through the city's affordable housing fund, is because that we're making up for market rate housing. That money just doesn't appear magically. It has to come from some type of funding source. This site is a little bit challenging with the past history of it, with the utilities and everything. But this would be a major black mark on the city if we were to turn down this project with Commonwealth after all the work that's gone into it on their end.
When did the city know about the 332,000? When did the DOT make that offer originally?
That goes back to 2007.
So why didn't we know that?
We had talked about it, like Eric stated in his memo. We met with Public Works and Engineering back in 2002. There wasn't any project on the site. They didn't think there was anything going to be happening with it, so we didn't believe it was a concern at that point.
Okay, I don't recall the city council having been, well, at least since I've been on it, having been told that the DOT had made that offer, and I don't recall this committee getting that information until very recently, and it would have maybe been beneficial to have been made aware of that earlier, because things may have progressed differently.
I think there was always an understanding that that land was going to be used for construction, to reconstruct that intersection, but the DOT put that project off for so many years and so many years that it wasn't, I don't believe anybody really, thought that they would come back and say, yeah, we're finally gonna do it in 7 years in the future, now 6 years in the future. So it's, I see it more as an opportunity cost. We're not losing any money, but it's, we run the opportunity of maybe of gaining $332,000 in 6 years, or we can build affordable housing now and over 10 years recoup that amount of money, plus have 50 affordable units and increase of housing available, and all of the other multiplier effects that happen when people have good, stable housing. So, any other questions? Any discussion? Alder Gisselman?
Just general, has Commonwealth changed their site plan at all? Or, because when we first started this, there were several bids for that property, mostly on grade. And what happened with Commonwealth is they had the underground parking, which boiled over to a variety of other issues. So is there site, is there building? Can they accommodate a building that they have already? I get the tax credits, I get that. But are they accommodating to the situation that we're in with regard to that site? I don't know about that, but it seems to me that if there was, while we have these two issues going on in front of us, how are we going to resolve that best for Commonwealth, best for the city of Wausau?
Yeah, so, bigger picture on the project. Commonwealth did reconfigure their site plan after learning about the utility concerns and the issues that we were having with that, and just the overall expense that we were looking at in terms of having to relocate utilities on the property. So they brought their site further, or their building further south, so they're still be able to develop the site in the same way with underground parking, just changed around a little bit of the parking layout and the entrances, and like Eric stated, instead of being a through road where people could potentially bypass that intersection, they're either gonna have to park in guest parking on the north end, or the garage, which would be on the south end, which would go underground. But yes, they've changed the site layout to meet that.
But not necessarily to the effect of the future of what that intersection's going to be looking like on Grand Avenue, because we don't know what that's like, but it's going to happen someday.
Sure. So as part of our initial discussions with Public Works and Engineering, we reserved a 20-foot strip along Grand Avenue that was, went out with the RFP stating that this land would be reserved. So they were aware of that, and they fit their design within that area that was already going to be allocated as right-of-way from the beginning. So we took that into account from the very beginning.
We only need 20 feet to have that extra turn lane or whatever they're planning?
That's what we've talked about, Eric.
Are you sure, Eric?
Eric and Ellen were talking with DOT, and that they said that 20-foot strip would be adequate for what they're looking for this resurfacing project.
So how close will that 20 feet be to that building?
It depends on how much, well, the 20 feet, way they have it currently designed would be awfully close to that right of way. They're likely going to move it a little bit off there. But keep in mind that right of way doesn't mean that the road surface is going to be right to the edge of
Right.
it. There'll be a separated walkway and different things in there to accommodate pedestrians better than they currently are now on Grand Ave.
Okay, any other discussion? Not hearing anything. Okay, so in order to make a motion, we're going to have to keep it in the affirmative. So the motion would be would be to vacate the right-of-way for Commonwealth Development and release obligation to the DOT, and then you could vote however you feel towards that, so. Yeah, go ahead.
So what's the future of this agenda item? Does it come back to infrastructure, public hearing, or does it automatically zip on to the city council?
I believe there's a public hearing in October with the infrastructure committee, correct?
Yeah, we have set a public hearing, just because it's a long process. We started that process. If you, as a committee and then the city council on September 10th doesn't want to vacate the property, then we just go ahead and not hold that public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on at the same time, just because of the time. Yeah.
Alder Killian?
Just to clarify, if we vote yes, we want to vacate the right-of-way, and if we vote no, we don't want to do that at this time, correct?
Correct. The motion would have to be to vacate the right-of-way at 700 Grand Avenue and release obligation to the DOT, of the DOT. And then if you do not wish to vacate, you would have to vote no. Okay. So do I I can entertain a motion?
Would it be proper at this time to table this until after I'm torn right now, but would it be proper at this point in time to table this until after the public hearing?
I don't know what the timeline, if.
I'm asking for advice. I don't know.
I don't know if we're under any particular timelines for that, or.
Yeah, I mean, so I think, and this is just me talking out loud without any legal or process, but, what you're going to be talking about in vacating that right-of-way, when you make that decision, you're in a sense saying, yes, we are willing to forego this payment because you're saying we are going to the right-of-way. So this is really just an information. So if there is something in the will of the council as a whole in this committee to not move forward with that we can save time and money for Commonwealth instead of going through that process and dragging that out. Does that make sense?
Well, but that would have to come to city council anyways,
Correct.
of course. I'm just wondering if it has to come back to infrastructure, or if we just move it on to city council after tonight.
Yeah, I think the plan is to move it on to city council, right, Eric? It would go on to city council on September 10th, this agenda item. And then if it were to successfully pass, then the public hearing in front of infrastructure would go on as approved last meeting at council. I understand it's a complicated process. There's a whole lot of different things in working through this. There's very descriptive regulations that you have to go through in terms of moving with right-of-way vacation. So, thank you.
Does that make sense? I see a puzzled look, so. I mean, it sounds like there's no particular timeline, but moving forward with it now does help the developer. I can see that, so. Or at least one, that, so the developer knows one way or the other before we get to that public hearing stage in October. Otherwise, if there's no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion. Okay, a motion has been made to vacate the right-of-way of 700 Grand Avenue for Commonwealth Development and release obligation of the DOT for reimbursement. Is there a second? Second from Tierney. Okay, any other discussion on that? And as I said, since this is in the affirmative, if you wish to vacate, you would vote aye. If you wish not to vacate, you would vote no. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'm confused. I think if you wish to make it aye.
Aye. Okay, so it's 3-2, the Killian and Tierney dissent. All right. Thank you. And next up is some closed session. Do I have anybody that wishes to read the closed session item before we take a roll call vote on that? Okay, Alder McElhaney.
I move we go into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Sub 1, Sub E of the Wisconsin State Statutes for deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session related to the discussion of committee recommendations regarding upcoming negotiations of city employee union contracts with Wausau Firefighters Association, Local 415, and Wausau Professional Police Association.
All right, do I have a second? Second from Tierney, and then we do require a roll call vote on this, so Tierney? Okay, aye. Aye, okay. McElhaney? Aye. Gisselman? Aye. Killian? And I vote aye as well. We will go into closed session, and we will adjourn from closed session, so we will not be coming back here.
Hey Jeremy, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but did you want to be in on a WebEx for closed session? You might have to unmute.
Are we allowed to do that?
I don't know.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You guys will have me through this WebEx otherwise.
Was that your plan?
If possible, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're able to have a WebEx for closed session.
I know, like, after.
No, then,
Snafu's
I
county.
completely trust in Chief Barnes to fill me in later if that's the case.
Okay, that works.
So they're not coming back.
Right, right.
Okay, have a good night,
Yeah.
Jeremy.
They
I'm gonna
are
turn it
not.
off then.
Yep.
I'll be in there in a second.